All right, guys. Tonight we're going to be looking at living and working in Virginia. So we're going to be moving past these early years at Jamestown. But before we do that, let's do a quick recap. So it's important to remember that the earliest settlers that came to Virginia came for the purpose of making money. They were hired by the Virginia Company to come over and make money so that any profits could be returned to the stockholders, the investors in the Virginia Company. And the way they wanted to make this money was by finding gold and silver. Well, we know that they didn't find any. And when they got here, they struggled to grow crops. And things were really bad early on in Jamestown, especially this winter of 1609-1610 that we call the starving time, when almost 2 out of every 3 settlers who would come over die as a result of this winter. But things begin to change the following spring, when in the 1610 they realized that they could make money from a crop, specifically tobacco. They could use tobacco to make money for the Virginia Company. And this tobacco was introduced to Virginia, or was brought over to Jamestown by John Rolfe in the spring of 1610. So a couple important things to know about tobacco and Virginia. First of all, Virginia is one of the best places in the world to grow tobacco. Virginia has long been known as one of the best producers of tobacco in the world. And there's several reasons for this. First of all, tobacco requires a long growing season. It needs 4 to 6 months from planting to harvest to really produce what you're looking for. And Virginia has a great climate for that. Tobacco also is a labor-intensive process. It requires that you start by planting the seeds in seed beds, and then you transplant the growing plant to a different field. And then as the plant is growing, you need to make sure you remove the flowers, because the tobacco that is used isn't the flowers, it's the actual leaves of the tobacco. And then finally, when the plant is ready for harvest, you need to dry out those leaves for 6 to 10 weeks. And Virginia offers one of the best places to go about this process of growing, harvesting, and drying out tobacco. It is important to understand that tobacco is really tough on the soil. It takes a lot of the nutrients out of the soil as it grows. So that's going to lead to some issues going forward. So the settlers realized that since the tobacco takes so much nutrients out of the soil, they're going to need lots of land so that they can rotate their crops from field to field. So they're going to need lots of fields to grow this tobacco in. And since they need lots of land and also lots of labor, it's going to lead to the creation of something called the headright system. And the headright system is going to lead to large farms or plantations being established throughout Virginia. So the way the headright system worked was the Virginia Company gave each settler who came over 50 acres of land for each person or head, so they count the heads, so headright system, each person that he paid to bring to Virginia, including himself. So, for example, you have a man who comes over to Virginia. He brings himself, obviously, and along with him he brings his wife and his 3 children. So that's a family of 5. In addition, he pays for 3 indentured servants, and we'll get more into indentured servants later on next week. He brings 3 indentured servants with him to Virginia. So in total, he pays for 8 people to come to Virginia. As a result, the Virginia Company will give him 8 heads times 50 acres of land. He will get 400 acres of land. I don't know any of you guys who live out in Goochland County or somewhere like that. 400 acres of land, if you have that much land, is still, even today, a huge chunk of land. This is a full-blown plantation at this point. And you can see here's an example of one of those early plantations in Virginia. So what does this headright system lead to? Well, it leads to these large plantations, these very, very large farms that need all of this land because they grow tobacco. And the tobacco uses up all the nutrients, so they require a lot of land to do so. And since these farms were so large, they often were worked by collections of families and their indentured servants. It leads to settlers in Virginia living a spread out life instead of living close together. So you'll see there's a plantation. Centered on the plantation, you have the plantation house and any homes for the servants, and then several miles away, you'll find the next plantation. Okay? They're not clustered together in towns and villages as much in Virginia as we'll see in other places. All right, and so on to tonight's response question. So, because of tobacco, we're going to see large plantations, large farms all spread out. So we want you to think, kind of make predictions here. What are going to be some positive results and what are going to be some negative results of having large farms all spread out in Virginia? Okay, so two parts, and these are kind of looking forward. What are your predictions? All right, what is a positive result, or what do you think is a positive result of having large farms all spread out? And what would have been a negative result of having large farms all spread out? And let's see how well you guys do with predicting what good and bad is going to come of these plantations in Virginia.